Alright everyone, it's time to talk about Kyle Rittenhouse in today's first video because, the trial has begun now and you're seeing nothing, I think, at this point that's even close to objective coverage of what happened. This is regardless of network. Until the trial actually is completed and Rittenhouse is found guilty or not guilty, there's really no legitimate reason for any news outlet, if they're claiming objectivity, if they're claiming to do, objective journalism of any brand, and they all do, there's no reason for them to use the weasel words like claiming that Rittenhouse had victims, which literally isn't even allowed in court because it would prejudice the jury. There's no reason for them to refer to him as a martyr, and you see this from certain networks. Of course, that is my own feeling, because I don't even think that he would be charged if the people that he had shot weren't Antifa rioters, weren't members of BLM Antifa. They were leftoids, and they were rioting at the time. It's interesting how the court is actually allowing that language to be used as well in the context of the actual case itself. That's not part of protests or anything like that. That's an incident where you have to determine simply, did Rittenhouse act in self-defense or did he murder several people? That's the only thing that you have to figure out. Everything else is tangential. The fact that it was during a riot may make sense to bring up, but calling the specific people shot rioters is like a tip of the card, I suppose, at some point. But the legacy media's narrative about Rittenhouse is almost universally, he was an evil murderer, he killed a bunch of people, and people tried to stop him and he kept killing. He was pointing his gun at people. He was trafficking weapons. He was jaywalking at the time. Much of what they're claiming is simply untrue. Some of it has been discredited completely, like we objectively know that it didn't happen. For instance, the idea that he trafficked a firearm across state lines is horseshit. The gun originated in Kenosha. It never crossed state lines. But I see so many people claiming that to be the case. Why? Because of bad reporting on the entire thing. In the initial lead-up, long before a trial commenced, the legacy media was claiming that Kyle Rittenhouse took a weapon from his own weapon across state lines to go to Kenosha and shoot people. We know that that's not true, but I still see it alluded to by a significant proportion of all the legacy media audience. Now, before I go a little bit further here, keep in mind that there will be a pinned comment down below with links to 4 other video hosting sites if you're watching this video on YouTube. I make several exclusive videos every day that go on those platforms. They don't go on YouTube. By the way, if I'm a little echoey at the moment, you'll notice my greeneries and scenery is not there. It's actually outside getting a good soak with some fertilizer, pending this colder weather where I won't be able to do that for a while. Give them some nice organic fertilizer. I think it's made out of kelp or something like that. Low yield. That's the way to do it. Anyway, some of the headlines boil down to was Kyle Rittenhouse a Nazi, or is he just a violent generic gun nut? Is Kyle Rittenhouse completely insane, or was he just mostly insane at the time that he murdered these poor people? That's a lot of what you get. There's no attempt at objectivity. The trial has barely started. They've already found him guilty in the court of public opinion. And the thing is, I expect he will probably be acquitted, unless the jury just is all wonky. We'll have to wait and see sort of the arguments that are made during the trial. The defense appears fairly solid. We can corroborate no gun was trafficked, so the idea that he's going to have face weapons charges is pretty stupid. He was underage while holding a gun in public. I guess he could get a misdemeanor charge for that, but it doesn't nullify self-defense. We know that he went there to put out fires because he proceeded to put out fires for the better part of, 2 hours or something before he was attacked. And we have footage of him being attacked. We know that a fourth individual, a fourth party, not the 3 people that Rittenhouse did shoot, a fourth party at some point fired a shot. Rittenhouse looks to see where it's coming from, actually. Other people appear to have potentially interpreted it as Rittenhouse having shot and then proceeded to pursue him, although I believe he subsequently went to put out the dumpster fire, the literal one, before that happened as well. And people were alternately cheering and booing because some people wanted to burn the gas station, I guess, and some people realized, hey, we're standing within 20 feet of the gas pumps right now. I don't think that we would survive that. I think we'd be roasted. Yeah, good job, Kyle. And then at some point, he's forced to flee. People are throwing shit at him. He falls down, actually, at one point. Someone tries to grab his gun, so he shoots him. Well, that's not murder. That's self-defense. Another person tries to bash his head in with a skateboard. He shoots him and kills him. He was being assaulted at the time. The fact that he had defended himself against one person and fired a shot doesn't negate the fact that he still felt threatened when another person came up to bash him in the head. Third person whips out a gun. This is the most clear-cut self-defense. Fires one shot, blows his arm half off. Hits him right in the forearm, or the wrist, or whatever. By the way, good shooting, Tex. This is clear-cut self-defense. I'm not even going to pretend to be objective in the, well, let's wait and see, there's got to be a proper trial sense. But I'm willing to come out and fucking admit it. CNN will have a headline like, evil white nationalist Kyle Rittenhouse on trial, and they'll pretend that they're still interested in journalism for journalism's sake. Well, no, that's in your interested in analysis and opinion. Well, lots of people do that. I know that I do. But I'm not going there on the ground with a chopper overhead and a big-ass fuzzy microphone and all that shit and an acronym behind my name pretending that I don't have my own political and social opinions. Some of these people still do. They act like they're 20s or 30s era gumshoes that are just trying to be noble. I'm only interested in the truth and reporting the truth. No, you're not. You're pushing a socio-political line, the same as virtually everyone else. We're not in an age of objectivity when it comes to reporting. The irony is that this gets really, really hilarious because we are in an age of objectivity because everyone is filming everything all the time. In the case of Rittenhouse, we have we have footage from multiple angles of most of what happened there. And this is getting more and more frequent, especially when you've got a riot, a protest, etc. There are a dozen people that are just there to record anyway. We know who attacked who. We know what was said. We know who fled. We know basically move by move. It's like watching a basketball play get broken down on a chalkboard. We know pretty much everything that happened. In that sense, objective journalism's easy. But much like with the Covington kids, you'll remember that debacle. We had footage. Right off the bat, it was publicly available. We had like 3 different angles of what went on before, during, and after the very edited down version that resulted in multiple defamation suits that was being used by like MSNBC, etc., Bloomberg and the New York Times. We know that the black Israeli group there was hurling racial insults and a bunch of Native Americans were walking by. And then they approached a group of kids with MAGA hats. I don't know exactly why. The kids were just standing there. There was a slight altercation, and then the kids were like actually dancing around doing a tribal dance, but that's because it was sports team related. It had nothing to do with Native Americans. They were actually grooving to the beat, and everyone parsed this down to make it look like the kids had approached the Native American marchers and begun doing war whoops and shit like that, but because they're racist, because they got MAGA hats on, so clearly, you know, they're terrible, deplorable people. Well, a cursory fact check showed you this wasn't the case. None of these suits, none of that reporting ever should have even happened. But you've got an unfortunate nexus for people who want to conduct so-called journalism, where they always fuck themselves in the ass by doing so. They need to get the story out instantaneously because it's something interesting, so they don't bother to fact check it, even though fact checking is easier than ever. Remember that time? I think it was 2 years ago, where they tried to pass off antiquated footage from literally a YouTube video of a Kentucky firing range where they were firing tracers and shit and blowing like oil cans up. They tried to pass an edited portion of that off as a Syria firefight. Oh, here's Assad's forces massacring people. It wasn't true. I looked it up myself. The Kentucky gun range video was from like, what, 2005 or something like that. It'd been on YouTube forever. This should have been an easy fact check, but there was no attempt to, because they're not interested in journalism. They want their audience to think Rittenhouse guilty, Rittenhouse evil person. In part, they realize that if they pretend to be objective and they say, well, you know, we've got to wait till the trial is over, the leftoids will spurg out and boycott their news company. It's almost because the cry bullies of culture, because they're a minority, but they're very loud as a minority, bully these legacy media groups in part into their behavior. I'm not pretending that they would be objective anyway, but that is at least a part of why they do this to this level. The fact is that it is possible to trace virtually everything that happened in Kenosha. Just like it was possible to trace everything that happened in any modern altercation where there were a group of people around. Really, the non-objective fact-finding thing is really only important in criminal cases or civil cases where you don't have a bunch of video and audio recordings. So it'd be something that happened in someone's home or something like, oh, he killed his wife. Well, he says that he didn't. She just fell off the balcony on her own. We don't have any video of it. You've got to do other fact-finding. You've got to interview people and look at forensic evidence and shit. We don't need forensic evidence. We have fucking video of like 90% of the whole thing from multiple angles. We know what happened in Kenosha. Rittenhouse acted in self-defense. It's funny to see the legacy media pretend, again, to appease the cry-bullies in part, that the opposite is true. But it's not. There was no weapons trafficking. There was no aiming a gun at random people before the altercation. He was being cheered by some people putting out fucking fires. He was doing what he said he was there to do, by the way. His story is corroborated. I went there to fight fires. I didn't go there to shoot anyone. What was he doing there when he first got there? We have footage of him with a fire extinguisher jogging over, deeply huffing and out of breath, probably jogged across the square when he saw that one, to put out a fire that was right next to some fucking gas pumps. Again, had he not gone there, the story of the day might have been 20 dead in horrible gas line explosion. Oh, this gas station just went up like a goddamn fireball and vaporized all these people. Obviously, it's Trump's fault, though. Racial injustice, take the knee, throw up the black power fist and shit. That's about all. Peace out.